A billionaire CEO tore up her fiancé's ultrasound and told her to erase their mistake. 3 years later, he froze mid-speech when he saw her standing in his charity gala, holding 2 children, with his ice blue eyes. This is a beautiful story for my lovely family. And before we dive in, let's take a moment to say a short prayer together. Heavenly Father, bless everyone listening today. May this story heal hearts, inspire faith, and remind us that your grace makes all things new. In Jesus' name, amen. If you're watching right now, comment amen and tell us where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful, heart-touching stories every day. And if you want to build the kind of unshakable confidence that makes you unstoppable, just like the woman in today's story, pick up my ebook, Radiate Confidence. 50 Powerful Strategies to Transform Your Self-Worth. The link is in the description below. Now let's begin this incredible journey together in love. Some women are born into money. Amelia Cortez was born into survival, and that difference would cost her everything. She believed kindness could soften even the cruelest hearts, but she was wrong, and the man who proved it wore a $10,000 suit. His name was Vincent Drake, 33 years old, billionaire CEO of Drake Enterprises, the kind of man who could buy silence with a signature and destroy lives with a glance. The world saw genius. Amelia saw hope, and that's where her nightmare began. They met when his mother Eleanor Drake was hospitalized for heart complications, and Amelia cared for her like she mattered, like wealth didn't build walls between human beings. Eleanor's icy demeanor melted under Amelia's warmth, and Vincent noticed, not because he cared, but because he wanted what he couldn't control. He told her once, voice smooth as poison, you have this peace about you, like the world can't touch you. Amelia smiled, innocent and blind to the predator studying her. That's because I've already been touched by it, she said softly. It's my turn to heal others. He admired her the way collectors admire rare things, something to possess, not protect. Admiration became obsession, and Vincent started showing up during her night shifts with expensive coffee and questions about her dreams, making her feel seen when really he was just learning her weaknesses. Within months, she became his girlfriend, but never his equal, always his secret, because Eleanor Drake would never approve of a nurse touching her billionaire son's world. Love blinded Amelia to the chains being wrapped around her heart, and she didn't see what every woman watching this should never forget. When a powerful man hides you, he's not protecting you, he's protecting himself. Would you ever date someone who kept you secret? Or is that the first red flag you'd never ignore? Comment below, because women like Amelia deserve better than men like Vincent. Vincent was the kind of man who made promises in the dark and broke them in the daylight, the kind who whispered forever while planning his exit. Amelia gave him everything, her trust, her time, her body, her belief that love could cross the divide between their worlds. She didn't know she was dating a man who saw people as investments, not souls, and that when investments stop paying returns, they get liquidated. He took her to expensive restaurants, but only the ones where no one from his world would see them, bought her gifts, but never anything she could show in public, told her he loved her, but never when anyone else could hear. She mistook secrecy for romance, thought hidden meant special, believed that one day he'd be brave enough to claim her in the light. Eleanor Drake ruled her son's life like a kingdom, and in her kingdom nurses didn't marry princes. They served them and disappeared when their usefulness expired. She'd built Drake Enterprises from her late husband's ashes, turned millions into billions, and she didn't do it by letting sentiment cloud judgment. When she looked at Amelia, she saw a threat wrapped in scrubs, a small-town girl with big dreams who dragged the Drake name through mediocrity. Vincent knew his mother's position, felt the weight of her expectations every time he signed a contract or stood before a boardroom, and somewhere deep in his hollow chest he knew that choosing Amelia meant choosing war with the woman who gave him everything. But here's what makes Vincent Drake the kind of man you should teach your daughters to run from. He didn't choose war, and he didn't choose Amelia. He chose himself, like he always did, like men with too much power and too little soul always do. Amelia worked double shifts to afford the small apartment she kept even while spending nights at Vincent's penthouse, saved every dollar because nurses don't get trust funds, sent money home to her sick father because that's what good daughters do. She lived in two worlds, Vincent's world of marble countertops and skyline views, and her world of bus rides and ramen dinners. Vincent never asked about her struggles, never wondered how she stretched her paycheck, never considered that the woman warming his bed went home to cold reality. He loved the idea of her simplicity, but never loved her enough to simplify his own complicated cruelty. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel like you weren't enough for their world, drop a comment, because that's exactly what Vincent did to Amelia, and it's exactly what weak men do to strong women. Their relationship existed in the shadows for 8 months. 8 months of Amelia convincing herself that time would change things, that love would win, that Vincent would eventually grow a spine. She ignored the signs, the way he deleted her texts immediately, how he never posted photos, the fact that his friends didn't know she existed. She told herself he was private, that rich people value discretion, that patience was love's greatest virtue. But patience isn't a virtue when you're waiting for a man to treat you like you matter, and discretion isn't love when it feels like shame. Then came the night that changed everything. The night Amelia's body whispered secrets her heart wasn't ready to hear. She'd been feeling off for weeks, exhausted beyond her usual post-shift fatigue, nauseous at smells that never bothered her, emotional in ways that felt foreign. She took the test in a gas station bathroom during her break, hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped it, and when those 2 lines appeared she felt the earth tilt beneath her feet. Pregnant. She was carrying Vincent Drake's child, carrying proof of a love he kept hidden, carrying the one thing that would force him into the light. She called him that night, voice trembling with hope and terror mixed into something she couldn't name. "Vincent, I need to see you. It's important." He sighed like she was interrupting something crucial, told her to come by his penthouse after his meeting, and the coldness in his tone should have warned her. But Amelia was drowning in the fantasy that this baby would be their beginning, not their end. And drowning people don't hear warnings. They just reach for anything that looks like salvation. She clutched that ultrasound photo like a lifeline, studied the tiny blob that would become a human, and imagined Vincent's face softening when he saw it. She rehearsed her words 100 times during the drive to his penthouse, practiced smiling through her fear, convinced herself that love always finds a way. But love doesn't find a way when it's built on quicksand. And Amelia was about to discover just how fast a billionaire can bury the woman who trusted him. Amelia walked into Vincent's penthouse that night carrying hope in her purse and a future in her womb, but she'd leave with nothing except the shattered pieces of who she used to be. The ultrasound photo was tucked inside her wallet, that grainy black and white image that proved love could create life even when it couldn't sustain trust. She found Vincent at his floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, scotch in hand, tie loosened, looking every bit the powerful man who controlled empires. And she was about to learn that men who control empires don't let anyone control them, not even biology. He didn't turn when she entered, just kept staring at his kingdom of lights like they mattered more than she ever would. "This better be urgent, Amelia. I've got Tokyo calling in an hour." His voice was steel-wrapped in indifference, the tone of a man already deciding she wasn't worth his time. She swallowed hard, felt her hands trembling as she pulled out the ultrasound, and for just a moment she let herself believe in fairy tales. "Vincent," she whispered, stepping closer, "you're going to be a father." The silence that followed wasn't contemplation, it was calculation. Vincent turned slowly, eyes dropping to the photo in her shaking hands, and what crossed his face wasn't joy or fear or even surprise. It was disgusting, pure, unfiltered disgust, like she'd just shown him a death certificate instead of a beginning. "You're joking," he said flatly, voice devoid of anything human. "Tell me this is some kind of sick joke." Amelia's voice cracked. "It's real. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. We're going to have a baby." She held out the ultrasound like an offering, like proof that what they'd shared in darkness could survive in daylight. But Vincent looked at that photo the way people look at evidence of their worst mistakes. He laughed then, not a happy laugh, not even a nervous laugh, but the cold, cruel laugh of a man who just realized someone dared to inconvenience him. "A baby," he repeated, venom dripping from every syllable. "You think I'd destroy everything I've built for a nurse and her mistake? If a man ever called your pregnancy a mistake, would you walk away or would you fight? Comment below. Because what Vincent did next is exactly why women need to recognize monsters before they become fathers. Amelia staggered backward like he'd physically struck her, tears flooding her eyes as her brain struggled to process the transformation happening before her. This wasn't the man who'd whispered sweet things in her ear, who'd traced her scars and promised she was different. This was a stranger wearing Vincent's face, and that stranger was looking at her like she was trash cluttering his perfect life. "I thought you loved me," she choked out, voice breaking on every word. "You said I was different, that I mattered." Vincent cut her off with a wave of his hand, the same dismissive gesture he probably used in boardrooms to silence people beneath his status. "You were convenient, Amelia. A distraction. Did you actually think this was going somewhere? That I'd introduce a nurse to my world, to my mother, to my investors?" He stepped forward, eyes ice cold and merciless. "You're sweet, I'll give you that. But sweet doesn't belong in my life, and neither does this." He gestured at her stomach like it contained a disease instead of his child. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the pain ripping through her chest like shrapnel. "Vincent, please. I'm not asking you to marry me. I just thought you'd want to know that maybe we could figure this out together." But Vincent was already moving, closing the distance between them with predatory precision. He grabbed the ultrasound from her trembling fingers, and for one insane second Amelia thought maybe he wanted to look closer, to really see the life they'd created. Instead, he held it up to the light, studied it with a cold assessment of a man evaluating garbage, and then he tore it in half. The ripping sound echoed through that massive penthouse like thunder, like the universe itself was breaking. Amelia watched those two pieces flutter to the marble floor, watched the image of her baby split down the middle, and something inside her shattered so completely she'd spend years trying to find all the pieces. Vincent tossed the remnants at her feet like confetti, like her pain was a celebration for his freedom. "Get rid of it, Amelia. I'll pay for the procedure. Wire you enough money to disappear quietly. But if you think you're trapping me with this, you're more naive than I thought. Have you ever seen someone's true nature emerge when they're backed into a corner? Comment if you think Vincent deserves forgiveness, or if some betrayals are unforgivable, because what happened next proves that cruelty doesn't stop at words." Amelia collapsed to her knees, gathering those torn pieces of ultrasound like they were sacred, tears streaming so hard she couldn't see straight. "I would never trap you," she sobbed, voice raw and desperate. "I loved you. I trusted you. How can you be this cruel?" But Vincent was already walking away, already done with her, his expensive shoes clicking against marble as he headed toward his office. He paused at the doorway, didn't even have the decency to look at her when he delivered the final blow. "You have 1 week to handle this. After that, if you contact me, if you tell anyone about this, I'll make sure you never work as a nurse again. I'll bury you so deep no hospital will touch you." Then he was gone, leaving Amelia alone on the floor of his penthouse, surrounded by broken ultrasound pieces and the wreckage of every dream she'd dared to dream. She stayed there for hours, clutching those torn fragments, rocking back and forth as reality carved out her insides. The man she'd loved didn't exist. He'd been a mask worn by a monster, and she'd been too blinded by hope to see the truth. She'd given him her body, her trust, her heart, and he'd returned it all in pieces on his marble floor. When she finally stood, legs weak and soul hollow, she left everything behind. The key to his penthouse, the gifts he'd bought to keep her quiet, even the expensive lingerie he'd purchased because it pleased him. She walked out of Vincent Drake's life wearing the same scrubs she'd arrived in, carrying nothing but the weight of his cruelty and the life growing inside her that he'd already abandoned. She didn't look back, didn't allow herself one last glance at the skyline view or the luxury that had never really been hers. Looking back meant hoping something would change, and Amelia had learned in the cruelest way possible that Vincent Drake didn't change. He just discarded. The next morning she quit her job at the hospital where Eleanor Drake received treatment. Couldn't bear the thought of seeing that family's name on donor plaques or hearing colleagues praise their generosity. She packed everything she owned into 2 suitcases, left her apartment in the middle of the night to avoid questions, and bought a one-way bus ticket to Seattle using the last of her savings. Her father called, worried because she wasn't sending money, and she lied through tears, telling him work was just busy, that everything was fine. But nothing was fine, and maybe nothing would ever be fine again. If you knew someone going through this, would you tell them to keep the baby or listen to the monster who tore up their ultrasound? Drop your honest answer below, because Amelia's next decision would change everything. Amelia spent the entire bus ride with her hand on her stomach, feeling nothing yet, but knowing life was forming despite Vincent's rejection. She'd grown up in poverty, knew how hard single motherhood would be, understood that keeping this baby meant sacrificing every dream she'd built. But every time she thought about Vincent's cold laugh, his disgusted face, the way he'd torn that ultrasound like it was nothing, something fierce and protective rose in her chest. This baby didn't ask to be created by a monster, and didn't deserve to pay for Vincent Drake's cruelty. So somewhere between the city that destroyed her and the unknown future waiting in Seattle, Amelia Cortez made a choice that would haunt Vincent Drake for the rest of his miserable life. She would keep the baby, not to trap him, not to punish him, but because this child deserved a parent who knew how to love, and Vincent Drake had proven he didn't possess that capacity. She'd raise this baby alone, work triple shifts if necessary, give her child the one thing Vincent's money could never buy, a mother who chose them over convenience. And if the universe had any justice at all, Vincent would one day realize that the greatest thing he ever created was the one thing he'd thrown away. 3 years vanished like smoke, and in that time Amelia Cortez rebuilt herself from ashes into something Vincent Drake would never recognize, a mother, a survivor, a woman who learned that strength doesn't come from marble penthouses, but from sleepless nights and unconditional love. She'd settled in a quiet Seattle neighborhood where nobody knew her story, where the name Drake meant nothing except another faceless billionaire on magazine covers. She worked night shifts at a small community clinic, came home to a cramped 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like baby powder and hope, and every morning she woke up to 2 pairs of piercing blue eyes that looked exactly like the man who'd abandoned them. Noah and Lila turned 3 years old on a Tuesday in March, and Amelia celebrated with grocery store cupcakes and secondhand toys, watching them laugh with the kind of pure joy that money can't manufacture. Noah had Vincent's sharp jawline already forming in his toddler face, that same intensity when he concentrated on building block towers. Lila inherited his ice blue eyes, but Amelia's gentle spirit, the kind of child who cried when she saw hurt animals and shared her snacks with kids who had none. They were perfect, these tiny humans created from a nightmare, and every time Amelia looked at them, she felt simultaneous heartbreak and gratitude. Heartbreak that Vincent would never know what he'd thrown away, gratitude that her children would never know a father who measured love in dollar signs. She'd built a quiet life far from Vincent's world, never Googled his name, never wondered if he remembered the nurse he destroyed. Some wounds heal better when you stop picking at them, and Amelia had decided that Vincent Drake was scar tissue best left alone. But fate has a sick sense of humor, and sometimes the universe forces confrontations that should have stayed buried. Her best friend Kiara worked in event planning, always begging Amelia to attend the charity galas she organized, always insisting that hiding from life wasn't the same as living. "You're 20 years old," Kiara would say, exasperated. "You can't spend every night in scrubs and every weekend at playgrounds. Come to one event. Wear something pretty. Remember you're human." Amelia always refused, always had an excuse, but Kiara was persistent the way good friends are, and eventually persistence wears down even the strongest walls. The invitation arrived on expensive cardstock, an elegant script announcing the annual Drake Enterprises Charity Gala benefiting children's hospitals. Amelia's hands shook when she read that name, memories flooding back like poison, Vincent's cold laugh, the torn ultrasound, the way he'd looked at her like she was disposable. "I can't," she told Kiara immediately. "Anything but that." But Kiara didn't know the whole story, didn't understand that Drake wasn't just a name, but a graveyard of everything Amelia used to believe about love. "It's just one night," Kiara pleaded. "The biggest gala of the year. You don't have to talk to anyone. Just come. Show yourself you've moved on." Moved on. As if moving on meant anything when you carry pieces of the past in your children's faces. Would you attend an event hosted by the man who destroyed you? Or would that be giving him power he doesn't deserve? Comment your honest answer. Because what Amelia decided next took more courage than running ever did. She agreed. Not because she'd forgiven Vincent, not because she wanted closure, but because she was tired of letting his cruelty dictate her choices. She bought a modest black dress from a thrift store, nothing fancy, but elegant enough to blend in, and arranged for her neighbor to watch Noah and Lila. The twins cried when she left, tiny hands reaching for her, and she almost turned back a dozen times. But she'd spent 3 years shrinking herself to fit into spaces where Vincent's shadow couldn't reach, and maybe it was time to stand in the light again, even if that light burned. The gala was everything she expected: crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains, people wearing watches that cost more than her annual rent, conversations about stocks and vacation homes, and things that mattered to people who'd never worried about keeping the heat on. Amelia felt like an imposter in her thrift store dress, clutching a purse that had seen better years, surrounded by wealth that reminded her exactly why Vincent had been ashamed of her. She stayed near the edges, avoiding eye contact, planning her escape after a respectable hour. Then the lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the stage, and Vincent Drake walked out to thunderous applause wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. 3 years had barely touched him. Same sharp features, same commanding presence, same aura of untouchable power. He smiled at the crowd like a king surveying his kingdom, and Amelia's stomach twisted with rage and grief mixed into something toxic. He looked happy, successful, unmarried based on the gossip she'd overheard, living his best life while she scraped by on nurse wages and exhaustion. He approached the microphone with practiced ease, that smooth smile that used to make her heart race, now making her blood boil. "Thank you all for coming tonight." His voice boomed through expensive speakers. Drake Enterprises has always believed in giving back, in supporting the most vulnerable among us, our children. The irony nearly made Amelia laugh out loud. Vincent Drake talked about supporting children when he'd torn up proof of his own, when he'd threatened the mother of his babies, when he'd chosen reputation over responsibility. If hypocrisy had a face, would it look like Vincent Drake preaching about family values? Drop a comment if you think karma is real, or if rich men always escape consequences. He continued his speech, words flowing like rehearsed poetry about legacy and responsibility and building futures for children in need. And with every sentence, Amelia felt her carefully constructed composure cracking. She should leave, should walk out before the rage building in her chest exploded into something she couldn't control. But her feet stayed planted, eyes locked on the man who'd made her believe in fairy tales before showing her monsters were real. Then Kiara appeared beside her, confused expression, phone in hand. "Amelia, your neighbor just texted. Noah got scared and they're asking if you can FaceTime them." Amelia's heart clenched. Her babies needed her, needed to see her face and know she was coming back. She pulled out her phone, stepped slightly away from the crowd, and connected the call. Noah and Lila's faces filled her screen, tears on their cheeks, and she whispered soothing words, promised she'd be home soon, and told them how much she loved them. She didn't notice Vincent had paused mid-sentence. Didn't realize the entire ballroom had gone silent. Didn't see him staring at her from the stage, microphone forgotten, color draining from his face like he'd seen a ghost. Because beside Amelia, visible in her phone's screen glow, were 2 3-year-old children with ice blue eyes and features that could only come from one source. Vincent's voice died in his throat, words evaporating as his brain struggled to process what his eyes were showing him. The woman he destroyed 3 years ago, standing in his gala, and beside her, impossible it couldn't be, she'd gotten rid of it like he'd demanded. 2 children who looked exactly like him. His hands gripped the podium, so hard his knuckles went white. Expensive microphone forgotten, speech abandoned. Because the past he'd buried was standing 15 feet away, wearing a thrift store dress, and holding proof of his greatest crime. The crowd murmured, confused by their host's sudden silence, following his frozen stare to the woman at the back. Amelia ended the call, looked up, and locked eyes with Vincent Drake across a ballroom full of the city's elite. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 lifetimes. Neither moved, neither breathed, the air crackling with recognition and reckoning. Then Vincent whispered 2 words into the microphone, barely audible but picked up by the sound system and broadcast to every corner of the room. "It's impossible." But standing there with her head high and her children's tears still wet on her heart, Amelia Cortez proved that the only impossible thing was Vincent Drake escaping the consequences of his cruelty forever. The reckoning he'd avoided for 3 years had just walked into his charity gala, and this time there was nowhere to run. The gala erupted into chaos within seconds, whispers spreading like wildfire through champagne-soaked conversations, phones emerging from designer purses to capture the moment a billionaire CEO froze on stage staring at a woman and children who looked like his mirror image. Amelia felt hundreds of eyes drilling into her back, felt the weight of curiosity and judgment from people who thrived on scandal. And suddenly her thrift store dress felt like a spotlight exposing every vulnerability she tried to hide. She turned to leave, to escape before this moment became something she couldn't control. But Vincent was already moving off stage with terrifying speed, cutting through the crowd like a shark through water. He reached her in seconds, grabbed her arm with enough force to bruise, voice low and desperate. "Amelia, we need to talk. Now." His eyes were wild, bouncing between her face and the phone she'd just held, and she could see his brilliant mind doing calculations, counting backward, realizing that the timeline matched perfectly with the night he'd destroyed her. She yanked her arm free, stepped back, voice steady despite the earthquake happening in her chest. "There's nothing to talk about, Vincent. You made your feelings clear 3 years ago when you tore up their ultrasound and told me to erase my mistake." The color drained from his face at those words spoken loud enough for nearby guests to hear, scandal spreading faster than he could contain it. "You kept them," he whispered, and she couldn't tell if that was accusation or awe in his voice. "You were supposed to. I gave you money. I told you to handle it." Amelia's laugh was bitter and sharp as broken glass. "Handle it? You mean murder your children because they were inconvenient? I may have been naive enough to love you, Vincent, but I was never broken enough to become you. If someone paid you to disappear with their children, would you take the money or raise them alone? Comment below, because what Amelia did took strength that most people don't have, and what Vincent's about to learn will destroy what little soul he has left." Vincent looked like he'd been gutted, an expensive tuxedo suddenly ill-fitting on a man realizing he'd thrown away something irreplaceable. "I need to see them," he choked out. "I need to know for sure," but Amelia was already shaking her head, fury and protective instinct colliding into something volcanic. "You need nothing from me. You lost the right to need anything the second you called them a mistake. Those children don't have a father, because their father chose his reputation over their existence." She turned to leave again, done with this confrontation, done with giving Vincent Drake any more pieces of her life. But then a voice cut through the ballroom chaos. A voice that made Amelia's blood turn to ice and Vincent's spine go rigid. "They are your children, Vincent." Eleanor Drake emerged from the crowd like a queen approaching her execution. Designer gown immaculate. Silver hair perfect. Expression carved from stone. "Stop pretending you didn't know." The ballroom went silent. Hundreds of wealthy vultures sensing blood in the water. Vincent turned to his mother, confusion and dawning horror warring across his face. "What are you talking about? I didn't know she kept them. She disappeared. She never contacted me." But Eleanor's cold smile said everything before her words confirmed it. "Because I paid her to disappear." The world tilted sideways. Amelia felt her knees buckle, caught herself on a nearby table. Champagne glasses rattling. "What?" The word came out broken, disbelieving. Because this couldn't be real. This twist couldn't exist in a universe that had already taken so much from her. Eleanor's gaze shifted to Amelia, and there was no remorse in those ice-chip eyes, only calculation. "You were 8 weeks pregnant when you tried to contact Vincent after he ended things. You texted, you called, you even came to his office building." Amelia's mind spun backward, remembering those desperate days after the ultrasound betrayal when she tried one last time to make Vincent understand, to give him a chance to choose differently. She'd sent messages begging him to reconsider, left voicemails through tears, showed up at Drake Enterprises only to be turned away by security. Every attempt had been met with silence, and eventually she'd assumed Vincent's cruelty ran so deep he couldn't even acknowledge her existence. But now Eleanor was saying something different, something that rewrote the entire narrative. I intercepted everything, Eleanor continued, voice matter-of-fact like she was discussing stock portfolios instead of lives destroyed. Every text, every call, every pathetic attempt you made to contact my son. I had his phone monitored, his messages filtered. You never reached him because I made sure he never knew you were still trying. She turned to Vincent, whose face had gone ash-gray. You thought she disappeared for money because that's what I told you. I showed you a bank transfer and said she'd taken $250,000 to abort the pregnancy and leave town quietly. Vincent staggered backward like he'd been shot, hand going to his chest. You told me she took the money. You said she called you, demanded payment, threatened to go to the press unless we paid her off. His voice cracked, years of certainty shattering in real time. You told me she was a gold digger who got pregnant on purpose to trap me. Would you ever forgive a parent who manipulated your entire life to fit their vision? Comment if you think Eleanor is worse than Vincent, or if they're both equally guilty of destroying Amelia's world. Eleanor's expression didn't change, didn't show even a flicker of remorse. I did what was necessary to protect our family name. You were building an empire, Vincent. You couldn't afford the scandal of an illegitimate child with a nobody nurse. I gave her enough money to start over, to raise the children somewhere far from our world, and she was supposed to stay gone. Her eyes cut to Amelia with disdain. Coming back here was a violation of our agreement. Amelia found her voice through the shock, rage giving her strength. There was no agreement. You had your assistant approach me in a parking lot, told me Vincent never wanted to see me again, that he'd deny the children were his if I ever came forward. You threatened to ruin me professionally, said you'd make sure I never worked as a nurse anywhere in the country. The memory was acid in her throat. I never took your money. I left because I thought Vincent hated me, not because you paid me off. Vincent turned to his mother with an expression Amelia had never seen on his face. Pure, undiluted betrayal. You told me she took $250,000. You showed me a bank transfer with her name on it. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. I created the documentation, made it look like she'd accepted payment. You needed to believe she was manipulative, needed to move on without guilt. It worked perfectly until tonight. The guests were filming now, phones raised like weapons, capturing the moment a billionaire dynasty imploded in real time. Vincent's breathing came in ragged gasps, his entire understanding of the past 3 years collapsing. I believed you, he whispered to Eleanor, voice broken. I thought she'd chosen money over our child. I thought she'd aborted the pregnancy and disappeared. I mourned what I thought I'd lost while believing she'd betrayed me. He turned to Amelia, and she saw something she'd never expected to see in Vincent Drake's eyes, genuine anguish. I didn't know, he said desperately. I swear to God, Amelia, I didn't know you kept them. I didn't know you tried to reach me. I thought you took the money and ran. I thought you'd gotten rid of the pregnancy like I told you to. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've spent 3 years hating myself for what I said to you that night, but I thought you'd made your choice just like I'd made mine. If your mother destroyed your relationship and lied for years to control your life, could you ever trust her again? Drop your answer in the comments, because family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's cruelty. And Eleanor Drake just proved she's the real villain of this story. Amelia wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to feel satisfaction that Vincent finally understood how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. But standing there watching him unravel, watching years of false narrative crumble, she felt only exhaustion. It doesn't matter anymore, she said quietly. Whether you knew or didn't know, whether she paid me or threatened me, none of it changes that you tore up their ultrasound and told me to erase our mistake. None of it changes that when I needed you most, you chose cruelty. She looked at Eleanor with disgust. And you chose control over your own son's happiness. Vincent's hands were shaking, reality settling over him like concrete. I have children, he breathed. I've had children for 3 years, and I didn't know. They're 3 years old. What are their names? Are they healthy? Do they look like me, or you, or... His voice broke completely. I've missed everything. First steps, first words, every moment that matters. I wasn't there because my mother decided I didn't deserve to know. Eleanor remained unmoved, spine straight, chin high. You would have made the wrong choice. You would have sacrificed your empire for sentimentality. And I built that empire to be your legacy, not to be destroyed by a nurse's children. She said it like Amelia wasn't standing right there, like those children weren't human beings, but obstacles to be managed. I did what any good mother would do. I protected my son's future. But Vincent looked at Eleanor like he was seeing her for the first time, seeing the monster behind the maternal mask. You didn't protect me. You destroyed the only real thing I've ever had. He turned back to Amelia, desperation clear. Please, let me fix this. Let me meet them. Let me be what I should have been from the beginning. Amelia stepped back, creating distance, protecting herself from hope that could become another weapon. You don't get to be their father just because you finally learned the truth. You don't get access to my children because your mother's manipulation absolves your original sin. Her voice was steel. You tore up their ultrasound, Vincent. Whatever Eleanor did after that doesn't erase what you did first. And my babies deserve better than a father who needs his lies exposed before he can love them. She walked away then, left Vincent standing in the wreckage of his assumptions, left Eleanor standing in the proof of her crimes, left an entire ballroom full of elite witnesses to the night the Drake family secrets detonated into public scandal. And as she pushed through the crowd toward the exit, she heard Vincent's voice behind her, broken and pleading. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I've changed. But Amelia had learned the hardest way that promises from powerful men are just words with expensive packaging, and she was done being destroyed by people who loved control more than they could ever love her. The gala scandal went viral within hours. Videos of Vincent's frozen face, Eleanor's cold confession, and Amelia's dignified exit spreading across social media like wildfire, turning a private nightmare into global entertainment. By morning, Amelia's phone was flooded with messages from reporters offering money for interviews, strangers sending support or judgment in equal measure, and one text from Vincent that simply read, "Please let me explain everything. I need to meet them. I need to make this right." She deleted it without responding, focused instead on shielding Noah and Lila from the storm brewing outside their small world. For 2 weeks, the internet dissected every angle. Think pieces about billionaire accountability, debates over Eleanor's manipulation versus Vincent's original cruelty, amateur detectives tracking down Amelia's clinic to photograph her during shifts. She kept her head down, refused all interviews, protected her children with the ferocity of someone who'd already lost everything once and refused to lose again. Vincent tried everything to reach her, flowers delivered to her apartment, lawyers offering child support arrangements, even showing up at her clinic only to be escorted out by security. Each attempt felt like another invasion, another reminder that powerful men think persistence equals redemption. Then the real nightmare began, and it started with a letter from the IRS. Amelia sat at her kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, coffee going cold, staring at official government letterhead that might as well have been a death sentence. The words blurred together: audit, suspicious activity, business irregularities, possible fraud charges, and her brain couldn't process how any of this applied to her. She ran a small community clinic, barely breaking even most months, pouring every dollar back into patient care and keeping the lights on. She'd never cheated on taxes, never filed false documents, never done anything except try to help people who couldn't afford expensive healthcare. But according to the IRS, her clinic had been flagged for involvement in a complex tax evasion scheme, something about shell companies and money laundering that she didn't understand. The letter demanded she appear for questioning, warned that criminal charges were pending, and froze her business accounts pending investigation. Amelia's hands shook so hard she dropped the paper, watched it flutter to the floor next to Noah's toy trucks and Lila's coloring books, and felt the walls closing in. When powerful people want to destroy you, they don't always do it with their hands. Sometimes they do it with paperwork and legal threats. If you were accused of a crime you didn't commit, would you fight back, or would fear make you surrender? Comment below, because what's happening to Amelia is exactly how the rich bury people who dare to challenge them. She called her accountant immediately, a kind older man who'd done her taxes for free because he believed in her mission. His voice was grave. "Amelia, I've been going through your records all morning since I got the notice. Someone's been using your clinic's tax ID number to process fraudulent transactions. Large sums of money flowing through shell companies registered under your business name. We're talking millions of dollars you never saw, never touched, but legally appear to have handled." The room spun. "That's impossible. I don't have millions of dollars. I barely make enough to cover rent and supplies." But even as she said it, a sick realization was forming in her gut. Her accountant continued, voice tight with worry. "These transactions started about 2 years ago, routing through what looks like legitimate medical billing, but hiding much larger transfers. Whoever set this up was sophisticated, knew exactly how to make it look like your clinic was the origin point." Amelia felt bile rise in her throat. Who would do this? Who even has access to? And then she understood, the puzzle pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. Drake Enterprises. Vincent's company had donated medical equipment to her clinic 18 months ago, a supposedly charitable gift that she'd accepted gratefully because her patients desperately needed updated machinery. They'd handled all the paperwork, set up the donation through their corporate foundation, and she'd signed documents without reading the fine print because she trusted that even Vincent Drake wouldn't weaponize charity. She'd been wrong. Catastrophically, devastatingly wrong. Within days the news broke nationwide. Small-town nurse accused of multi-million-dollar tax fraud screamed headlines. Her face plastered across news sites beside words like criminal, scheme, and corruption. The irony was suffocating. She'd spent years working 60-hour weeks to provide health care for people the system ignored. And now that same system was destroying her for crimes she didn't commit. Her clinic was shut down pending investigation, her personal bank accounts frozen, and parents at Noah and Lila's daycare started giving her suspicious looks, whispering when she arrived for pickup. Vincent called repeatedly, left voicemails swearing he had nothing to do with it, claiming he was investigating from his end. But Amelia was done believing anything that came from the Drake family orbit, done trusting that powerful people could be anything except self-serving. "You said you wanted to fix things," she screamed into his voicemail after another sleepless night. "But everything you touch still destroys me. Maybe you didn't tear up the ultrasound this time, but someone in your world did something worse. They're trying to take away my freedom, my children's mother, everything we built." Do you think it's possible Vincent really didn't know about the fraud? Or is this just another layer of his family's manipulation? Drop your honest opinion. Because trust is the first thing powerful people weaponize. And Amelia's learning that lesson in the cruelest way possible. The evidence was damning on paper. Her signature on documents, her clinic's information on transfers, her business accounts linked to the shell companies. It didn't matter that she'd never seen most of these documents, that sophisticated forgers could replicate signatures, that anyone with resources could manufacture evidence. The prosecution was building a case that could send her to prison for 20 years, and her court-appointed lawyer looked at the paperwork with the expression of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. "They've got you buried," he admitted quietly. "Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing. Without evidence of who actually committed the fraud, you're the name on all the documents." Amelia barely slept, surviving on coffee and terror, watching Noah and Lila play with toys while calculating how to explain to 3-year-olds that mommy might go away for a very long time. She'd fought so hard to give them stability, to create a life where they felt safe and loved. And now it was all collapsing because she dared to exist in Vincent Drake's orbit. The man had destroyed her once with cruelty, and now his world was destroying her again with calculated precision. And the worst part was she couldn't even prove he was behind it. Then Vincent did something she never expected. He held a press conference. Amelia watched from her apartment, Noah on her lap, Lila playing with blocks, as Vincent Drake stood before a wall of cameras and microphones looking more human than she'd ever seen him. His hair was disheveled, tie loose, eyes carrying shadows that money couldn't erase. "My name is Vincent Drake," he started, voice steady but strained, "and I'm here to address the charges against Amelia Cortez." The reporters erupted with questions, but he held up a hand for silence. 3 weeks ago, I learned that I'm the father of 3-year-old twins I never knew existed. I learned that my mother manipulated both Amelia and myself, orchestrating our separation through lies and financial coercion. His jaw tightened. I also recently learned that members of my own board of directors have been using Drake Enterprises' charitable foundations as vehicles for tax evasion and money laundering. Amelia Cortez's clinic was one of several small businesses targeted specifically because they were vulnerable and unlikely to have resources to fight back. If Vincent is telling the truth, does that absolve him of the original betrayal? Or is he just trying to play hero now that his crimes have consequences? Comment what you really think, because redemption without accountability is just public relations. The press conference room exploded with shouting questions, but Vincent powered through. I have turned over all internal communications, financial records, and evidence to federal investigators. 4 members of my board have been arrested this morning, and I am cooperating fully with the prosecution. He looked directly into the camera, and Amelia felt like he was looking straight through the screen at her. Amelia Cortez is innocent. She was targeted by people in my organization because they knew her connection to me made her an easy scapegoat. They used my family's charitable donations as cover for criminal activity, and she nearly paid the price for our corruption. He paused, composure cracking slightly. I can't undo the past 3 years. I can't erase the night I tore up that ultrasound or the words I said that destroyed someone who trusted me. But I can make sure the corruption in my company doesn't destroy her twice. His voice dropped, heavy with something that might have been genuine remorse. I resigned as CEO of Drake Enterprises effective immediately. I'm liquidating personal assets to create a legal defense fund for all the small businesses targeted in this scheme, including full restitution for Amelia's clinic and personal damages. The reporters went wild, cameras flashing like lightning. But Vincent just stood there looking like a man who'd finally realized the cost of his empire was higher than he could afford to pay. Amelia watched with her children on her lap, tears streaming down her face, not because Vincent was playing hero, but because she was finally being vindicated. The fraud charges would be dropped, her clinic could reopen. Her children wouldn't grow up visiting their mother in prison. But as the press conference ended and Vincent walked away from the podium, Amelia realized something that hurt worse than any betrayal. Even when Vincent Drake tried to do the right thing, the damage had already been done. Her reputation was shattered, her sense of safety destroyed, her ability to trust anyone completely obliterated. He could throw money at the problem, could sacrifice his position and cooperate with investigators. But he couldn't give her back the months of terror or the innocence her children lost watching their mother break under false accusations. When your life is destroyed by someone's world even after they claim they've changed, is forgiveness possible or is some damage too deep to heal? Tell me in the comments, because Amelia's about to make a choice that will define the rest of her life, and Vincent's final chance at redemption hangs in the balance. The scandal consumed everything. Vincent's resignation trended globally for 72 hours. His board members' arrests dominated financial news, and Amelia's name was finally cleared in headlines that couldn't undo the damage of calling her a criminal for months. The charges were dropped, her accounts unfrozen, her clinic given the green light to reopen with full restitution plus damages that would keep her operational for years. On paper, justice had been served. But justice on paper doesn't heal the scars of watching your children ask why strangers were calling mommy a bad person. Doesn't erase the nights Amelia spent researching prison visitation policies for toddlers. Doesn't restore the belief that good things can happen to good people. Vincent tried everything to reach her after the press conference. Letters delivered by courier, messages through her lawyer, even a trust fund established for Noah and Lila with enough money to pay for college 10 times over. Each gesture felt like another stone in the wall between them, another reminder that Vincent Drake's language was money and power, not the quiet consistency that real love required. Amelia ignored it all, focused on rebuilding her clinic and her life, teaching her children that storms pass and sunshine follows even when you can't see it coming. Then Vincent did something that changed everything. And he did it in the most public way imaginable. 3 weeks after his resignation, every major news network received an anonymous tip about a live press conference scheduled for noon at the downtown plaza. No corporate branding, no Drake Enterprises logo, just Vincent Drake standing alone with a microphone and a crowd of confused reporters who'd shown up expecting another scandal. Amelia was at her clinic restocking supplies when Kiara called, breathless. "Turn on the news. Right now. Vincent's doing something crazy." Amelia pulled up the live stream on her phone, and there he was, Vincent Drake, without the armor of expensive suits and stage lighting, wearing jeans and a simple button-down, looking more human than billionaire. The plaza was packed with curious onlookers, cameras from every network, and the kind of crowd that gathers when they smell blood in the water. Vincent stepped to the microphone, no prepared speech visible, no PR team hovering. Just a man about to do something that would either redeem him or destroy him completely. "My name is Vincent Drake," he began, voice steady but stripped of the commanding tone he'd always carried. 3 years ago, I committed an act so cruel that I've spent every day since trying to justify it to myself. I destroyed a woman who loved me because I was a coward. And today, I'm here to take full responsibility, not just in legal terms, but in human terms. The crowd went silent, phones raised, the internet watching in real time as a fallen billionaire prepared to confess his sins. Vincent's hands gripped the microphone stand, knuckles white. Amelia Cortez came to me 3 years ago, carrying proof that she was pregnant with my child. She was terrified and hopeful, believing that the man who'd whispered promises would stand by her. His voice cracked slightly. Instead, I laughed at her. I called her pregnancy a mistake. And then I tore her ultrasound photograph in half and told her to erase what we'd created. Can a public confession ever truly make up for private cruelty? Or is Vincent just performing redemption for an audience? Drop your real thoughts below, because what happens next will either prove he's changed or confirm he's still the same manipulative billionaire hiding behind different tactics. Gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras zooming in on Vincent's face as he continued. I believed my mother's lies that Amelia had taken money to disappear, that she'd aborted our child and moved on. I spent 3 years thinking I'd dodged a bullet, that I'd made the smart choice protecting my empire. He looked directly into the camera, and Amelia felt like he was staring into her soul. But the truth is I didn't dodge anything. I destroyed the only real thing I've ever had. I have 3-year-old twins named Noah and Lila who I've never met, never held. Never been a father to because I chose reputation over responsibility. The reporters erupted with questions, but Vincent powered through, voice growing stronger with each confession. My company was used to frame Amelia for crimes she didn't commit, to bury her under legal threats, because people in my world saw her as collateral damage. Even after I resigned, even after I cooperated with investigators, the damage was done. Her name was dragged through headlines. Her children saw their mother called a criminal. Her life was destroyed twice by the Drake family orbit. He paused, taking a shaking breath, and what happened next shocked everyone watching. Vincent stepped away from the microphone, pulled out his phone, and pulled up a photo. The torn ultrasound from 3 years ago, the pieces he'd apparently kept, now taped back together and preserved behind glass. He held it up to the cameras. That grainy black and white image of the babies he'd rejected visible to millions of viewers. "This is what I destroyed," he said quietly, voice breaking completely. "This moment of hope, this proof of life, this chance at something bigger than money or power or legacy. I kept the pieces because even in my cruelty I couldn't throw them away completely. And now they're a reminder of the man I was, the man I refuse to be anymore." If someone keeps the evidence of their worst moment, does that mean they feel genuine guilt or are they just holding on to control? Comment what you think, because Vincent's next words will either convince you he's changed or prove he's still playing games. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the reporters stopped shouting questions. Everyone transfixed by the rawness of what they were witnessing. Vincent set down the framed ultrasound, turned back to the microphone, and what he said next would be replayed millions of times across every platform. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve access to my children or a second chance with the woman I destroyed. But I'm done hiding behind lawyers and press releases and corporate statements. His voice grew firm, decisive. I'm liquidating my remaining assets, every stock, every property, every investment that made me a billionaire, and creating a foundation in Amelia's name dedicated to supporting single mothers and community healthcare. The reporters exploded, but Vincent raised his voice over them. I'm moving to Seattle, taking a job at a nonprofit healthcare organization, making $40,000 a year. I'm done being Vincent Drake, the billionaire. That man was a monster hiding behind wealth. I want to learn what it means to work for something instead of owning it, to serve instead of control, to give instead of take. He looked directly into the camera again, tears visible now, the mask completely shattered. Amelia, if you're watching this, I know I don't deserve even a minute of your time. I know that everything I touch has destroyed you, that my world has been nothing but pain. But I want you to know that I finally understand what you tried to teach me 3 years ago. That love isn't something you possess, it's something you become. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Tell Noah and Lila that their father is learning what love means. Tell them that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of knowing them, even if that day never comes. Would you believe a billionaire who gives up everything? Or is this just another manipulation wrapped in humility? Tell me in the comments, because millions are watching this moment and everyone has an opinion, but only one person's opinion matters. And she's watching from a small clinic in Seattle with tears streaming down her face. The live stream showed Vincent walking away from the microphone, leaving the ultrasound on display, disappearing into the crowd without answering questions or making statements. Within minutes, the video went viral. 10 million views in an hour, 50 million by evening. Hashtags trending worldwide debating whether this was genuine redemption or performative guilt. Think pieces analyzed every word. Body language experts dissected his expressions. And the internet split between those who believed people could change and those who thought billionaires only perform humanity when their empire crumbles. But in her small clinic in Seattle, Amelia Cortez sat alone in her office, watching the video loop on her phone, watching Vincent break down in ways she'd never imagined possible. She thought about the man who'd torn her ultrasound, the man who'd chosen cruelty over courage, and she tried to reconcile him with the man on screen, giving up everything that defined him. A part of her wanted to believe it was real, that suffering had finally cracked open Vincent's heart and shown him what mattered. Another part remembered the months of terror, the fraud accusations, the way his world kept destroying her even when he claimed to be fixing things. She thought about Noah and Lila, about how they'd grow up with questions about their father, about whether absence was better than disappointment. She thought about forgiveness, about whether it was something you gave because someone earned it or something you gave to free yourself from the weight of anger. And she thought about the fact that Vincent Drake had just dismantled his entire life on the chance that she might one day let him meet the children he'd abandoned. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I meant every word. I'm not asking for forgiveness or access or anything except the chance to prove that people can change. I'll be in Seattle working at Riverside Community Health starting Monday. If you ever want to talk, I'll wait. If you never want to see me again, I'll understand. The foundation is yours regardless. The trust fund for Noah and Lila is untouchable. None of it comes with conditions. I just need you to know that you were right. Kindness can change even the coldest hearts. It just took mine 3 years too long to thaw. Amelia stared at those words, at the vulnerability wrapped in text message format, at the evidence that maybe, possibly, Vincent Drake had finally learned that love isn't something you demand, but something you become worthy of receiving. She didn't respond, didn't know what to say to a man who destroyed her twice, and was now trying to rebuild himself from the ground up. But she saved the message, kept the number, and allowed herself the smallest sliver of possibility that maybe the universe hadn't completely given up on second chances. When powerful men fall from grace, is it ever genuine or always strategic? Comment your truth, because Amelia's next decision will either open the door to healing or close it forever. And after everything she survived, whatever choice she makes is the right one. 6 months passed like seasons changing, slowly at first. then suddenly with an undeniable transformation that rewrote the landscape of everything Amelia thought she knew about forgiveness and second chances. Vincent kept his word in ways that didn't require announcements or press conferences. Just the quiet consistency of a man learning that redemption isn't performed but lived. He moved to Seattle, took the nonprofit job at Riverside Community Health making a fraction of what he'd once spent on watches, and disappeared from the billionaire spotlight so completely that tabloids eventually stopped tracking him. No paparazzi caught him at expensive restaurants because he ate meal-prepped lunches in break rooms. No social media documented luxury vacations because his weekends were spent volunteering at homeless shelters. The man who'd once measured worth in stock prices was learning to measure it in the small ways he could serve people his former world had ignored. Amelia heard about him through the community grapevine, nurses who worked with him reporting that he was surprisingly competent at administrative work, patients mentioning the quiet guy who'd helped them navigate insurance paperwork without judgment, colleagues noting that he never talked about his past or acted like he deserved special treatment. He existed on the periphery of her world, close enough that she knew he was keeping his promise, but far enough that he wasn't forcing his presence into her life. He never showed up at her clinic unannounced, never tried to engineer accidental meetings, never leveraged his remaining connections to create situations where she'd have to acknowledge him. He simply existed, working his modest job, living in a modest apartment, becoming the kind of invisible that billionaires never learn unless they're genuinely trying to disappear from who they used to be. The foundation he'd created in Amelia's name became operational within months. Real infrastructure supporting single mothers with healthcare access, childcare assistance, legal aid, and job training. No PR campaign announced its launch. No celebrity endorsements brought attention. Just quiet work that changed lives without demanding recognition. Amelia received quarterly reports from the foundation's board, all independent members, no Drake family involvement, showing exactly how the money was being spent. Every dollar accounted for, every program designed to address real problems she'd personally experienced during her years of struggling alone. It was a kind of wealth redistribution that felt less like charity and more like reparations. And despite her resistance to accepting anything from Vincent's world, she couldn't deny that the foundation was saving women who reminded her of herself 3 years ago. Can someone who built an empire on selfishness ever truly become selfless? Or is Vincent just trading one identity for another? Comment below, because the answer to that question is about to reveal itself in a letter that changes everything. Then, on a Tuesday in October, exactly 3 years and 2 months after Vincent tore up that ultrasound, Amelia received an envelope with no return address. Just her name written in handwriting she recognized from the few notes Vincent had left during their brief relationship. She almost threw it away unopened, almost deciding that whatever words it contained couldn't change the mathematics of their history. But something made her pause, maybe curiosity, maybe the exhaustion of carrying anger for so long, maybe just the human need to know if people can really transform. She opened it standing in her kitchen while Noah and Lila colored at the table, their 3-year-old concentration completely absorbed in staying inside the lines. The letter was written on plain paper, no expensive stationery, no corporate letterhead. Just words that felt like they'd been written and rewritten 100 times before being deemed worthy of sending. Dear Amelia, it began, and she could hear Vincent's voice in her head, stripped the arrogance she remembered. I'm writing this because I've finally learned that some things can't be said face to face without pressure. And I need you to know these truths without feeling obligated to respond. I spent 3 years believing I was protecting my empire, when really I was protecting my ego. I thought power meant controlling outcomes, that love was a weakness that made men vulnerable to exploitation. My mother taught me that emotions were liabilities to be managed, that people outside our world were either useful or disposable. And I believed her because believing her was easier than admitting the empire we built was hollow at its core. When you told me you were pregnant, I saw a threat to everything I'd been programmed to value: reputation, control, the carefully constructed image of Vincent Drake, the untouchable CEO. I didn't see a human being I'd claimed to love, didn't see a child who deserved better than a father afraid of scandal. I saw a problem to be eliminated, and I eliminated it with cruelty, because cruelty was the only language I'd ever been taught to speak when dealing with inconvenience. If your parents taught you that love was weakness and people were disposable, would you blame them for who you became or take responsibility for your own choices? Drop your answer, because Vincent's words are about to reveal whether he's learned the difference between explanation and excuse. I can't blame my mother for who I was that night. She gave me tools, but I chose to use them. She showed me how to destroy people, but I was the one who ripped that ultrasound and watched you break without feeling anything except relief that my problem was solved. That's on me. That's the man I was. And pretending otherwise would be the same cowardice I've spent 6 months trying to unlearn. Working at Riverside has taught me what you tried to show me 3 years ago, that the measure of a person isn't what they own, but what they give when giving costs them something real. I've met single mothers working 3 jobs to keep their kids fed, immigrants navigating systems designed to exclude them, elderly patients choosing between medication and rent. Every day I see people with 1% of the resources I had displaying 100 times the courage, and it destroys me knowing I once looked at someone like you and saw only threat instead of strength. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I've learned that forgiveness isn't something you demand. It's something you become worthy of through years of consistent change that nobody witnesses or applauds. I'm writing to tell you that you were right about everything. Right that kindness matters more than power. Right that some things are more valuable than empires. Right that real love means choosing someone even when it costs you everything you thought defined you. I've started volunteering at a children's hospital on weekends, reading to kids whose parents can't afford to take time off work. Every time I see a 3-year-old, I think about Noah and Lila. I wonder if they like books or sports or art. I wonder if they have your gentleness or my intensity or some combination that makes them entirely their own people. I wonder if they ask about me, if they know I exist, if telling them about their father would bring them pain or closure or confusion. Would you tell your children about a father who abandoned them but claims he's changed? Or would you protect them from potential disappointment? Tell me in the comments, because Amelia's facing this exact question, and there's no right answer. Only the answer that protects her baby's hearts. I'm not asking to meet them. I'm not asking for access to your life or a chance to play father when I forfeited that role 3 years ago. I'm only asking that someday, if they ever have questions, you'll tell them the truth, that their father was broken in ways that had nothing to do with them, that his cruelty came from cowardice, not from anything they lacked, and that he spent the rest of his life trying to become someone worthy of the title they deserved from birth. The foundation will run in perpetuity, helping women you'll never meet to escape situations I helped create through the example I set about how powerful men treat inconvenient pregnancies. The trust fund for Noah and Lila is untouchable, managed by independent trustees who'll ensure they have every opportunity one denied them by my absence. None of it makes up for what I took from all of you. None of it earns me redemption. But maybe it prevents the next Vincent Drake from destroying the next Amelia Cortez. And maybe that's the only legacy that matters. I've learned that love isn't possession, it's release. It's wanting someone to thrive even if their thriving doesn't include you. It's protecting them from your own worst instincts instead of demanding they accept you despite those instincts. It's understanding that some damage can't be undone, only acknowledged and mourned and learned from so it doesn't repeat. Tell Noah and Lila that their father finally learned what love means. Tell them it took me too long, cost too much, and came 3 years too late. But tell them that the last good thing I ever did was let their mother go, let them grow up without the toxicity I would have brought into their world before I'd healed my own broken places. You deserved better than me 3 years ago. You deserve better than me now. But you also deserve to know that you changed someone who thought he was unchangeable, and that somewhere in Seattle, a former billionaire is learning to measure wealth in ways his mother never taught him. In the smiles of patients who finally got the care they needed, in the gratitude of mothers who found resources that saved them, in the knowledge that maybe, possibly, he's finally adding something to the world instead of just taking from it. Thank you for surviving me. Thank you for raising our children with the love I couldn't access. Thank you for being right about everything even when being right cost you everything. I hope you find someone who gives you the partnership I couldn't, who loves you with the consistency I failed to demonstrate, who sees your strength as a gift instead of a threat. With respect and permanent regret, Vincent. Is a letter enough to prove someone's changed, or are words without years of action just another form of manipulation? Comment your truth, because Amelia's about to make a decision that will either open a door or close it forever. And whatever she chooses, she's choosing for her children's future, not just her own healing. Amelia read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face by the final paragraph. Hand pressed to her chest, trying to contain the emotional earthquake happening inside her. She looked at Noah and Lila still coloring, oblivious to the complexity of their origin story. And she thought about all the ways children ask questions as they grow older. She thought about Vincent at that children's hospital reading to other people's kids while his own didn't know his name. She thought about how anger had protected her for 3 years, but was starting to feel heavier than the forgiveness she'd been resisting. She didn't respond to the letter immediately. Didn't rush into decisions that required careful consideration and probably therapy and definitely more time than 6 months could provide. But she folded it carefully, placed it in a box with the taped-together ultrasound that someone had anonymously left at her clinic, proof that Vincent had returned even the pieces of what he'd destroyed. And she allowed herself to consider that maybe, possibly, some people could change if the consequences of staying the same became unbearable enough. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning when Noah asked for the first time why they didn't have a daddy like other kids, Amelia sat them down with age-appropriate honesty and told them a story about a man who made terrible choices, learned from devastating consequences, and was trying every day to become someone worthy of their love. She didn't promise them a father, didn't guarantee Vincent would ever be part of their lives. But she told them the truth, that their father existed, that he thought about them constantly, that he was learning to be better than he'd been. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe redemption wasn't a destination, but a direction. And Vincent Drake was finally walking the right path even if he'd never reached the endpoint where all was forgiven and forgotten. Maybe some betrayals were too deep to heal completely, but shallow enough that time and consistent change could transform them from open wounds into scars that proved you survived. Don't let people like Vincent Drake use power as a weapon against those who dare to love them. Subscribe so stories like Amelia's get told, so single mothers know they're not alone, so the next generation learns that true strength isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the courage to choose love even when love chooses pain. Comment if you believe people can change or if some betrayals are forever, because the only way we learn is by sharing our truths. And your truth matters in a world that tries to silence the voices of people like Amelia Cortez.